Hello, this is Professor Hester, and I'm going to show you how to use Sentinel Values. Sometimes when we ask a user for input, we don't know how many values will be entered. We need to know where the end of the data is, so we will create a Sentinel value. A Sentinel value is a special value that signifies the end of the data. Its value should not be a value that is valid for the data. Let's see some examples. If we were entering test grades, -9 would probably not be a valid test grade, so we could use it as our Sentinel value. -9 would also work for entering people's ages. But if we were working with temperatures, -9 is a valid temperature, and it would not be a good Sentinel value. Instead, we might use a value like -9999. Let's see how we can create this in a program. I want to ask a user for a list of stock prices. After they are entered, I want to print some summary information. So first, which loop should we use for this program? I don't know how many numbers will be entered, if any at all. Therefore, I'm going to use a do-while loop. So let's begin by creating our variables. I need a variable to store the user's entry. Now, since stock prices have decimal values, the variable needs to be a floating point data type, or a double. I also want to average the prices entered, so I will create variables sum and average. Finally, I need to count the prices entered, so I create integer count. Notice that I did initialize the variables price, sum, and count. So let's begin by creating our loop. And remember, the do-while loop is a post-test loop. So we know this loop will execute at least one time. Now we need to decide what value to use for our Sentinel value. We need a value that the user would never enter as a stock price, so -1 is a good choice. I'm going to start by displaying the prompt and letting the user know to enter the stock price or a -1. After I display the prompt, I need to get the user's input. Now, I only want to process this data if the Sentinel value was not entered, so I'm going to check the value of price. So I'm going to compare price to -1 with not equal -1. And if that's true, I have a valid stock price, and I'm going to add that price to my running total in the variable sum. Also, I want to increment my count, so when I'm finished, I will know how many prices I added. To finish our loop, now we need to enter the test condition. So with the do-while loop, I will put while, and then I'll put the test condition in parentheses, followed by a semicolon. My test condition is going to be that I want to continue the do while loop as long as price is not equal to -1. After the do while loop finishes, we have all of the prices that the user entered, and we can now calculate the average. However, it is possible that no values were entered, and we don't want to take a chance of dividing by 0. So, as long as count is greater than 0, I can calculate and display the average. And I'm also going to include the number of entries. So now let's compile and test the program. I'm going to come up here to debug and start without debugging. And now I see my prompt to enter the stock prices. So I'm going to just make up some numbers here. Well, let's include a penny stock. And that should be good enough. And so for these 4 stocks, they average out to $36.04. Now, whenever we write a program like this, it's important that we test all situations that could occur. We just ran the program where we entered prices and successfully calculated the average. I want to run the program again, this time without entering any valid prices. So immediately I'm going to enter -1, and that means my count is going to be 0. I don't want to accidentally try to calculate an average. Now that I entered -1, I see that there is no output. That makes sense because in this program, if count was 0, no output is displayed. So it looks like my program successfully runs whether a user enters values or does not. So that's how you use Sentinel Values. You need to look at what type of data you are working with and choose a value that would not be valid for the type of data that you have. Then you can test to see if that value was entered and consequently stop accepting input or whatever makes sense for the type of program you are writing.